Hello everyone! In this video I'm going to show you how to edit a website in Squarespace. I'm going to show you all the basics and it's going to be very fun, very cool. So let's just jump right into it. So this is the Squarespace dashboard for your website. When you're not in edit mode, you have all of these options that pop up over here on the left. The main link here is the website link and pages specifically. All the rest of these ones down here are just going to be relevant if you include that particular feature in your website, like e-commerce or email marketing or scheduling. Otherwise, you're probably going to be spending most of your time in website pages in this page right here. The styles link under website takes you to the site styles, where you can change your fonts, your colors, your button styles, your form styles, and also some global animations and spacing settings. I'm not going to go over site styles too much in this video because I just talked about it in my last video, so make sure you go check that out if you're interested in learning more about site styles. You can access the site styles also by pressing this paintbrush icon over here in the top right. So that takes you to the same place as this. Okay, same button pretty much. So let's go into the pages. These are all the pages on our website right now. The pages that are listed under main navigation are the ones that are going to be in the main navigation in the header. We got services, about, and contact. We also have this donate button here, and you can see it's not in the main navigation. It's because it's like a separate button in the header. It's not part of this navigation menu. You can see that it's down here under not linked. Same as the home page, because you notice we don't have home here in the main navigation. Down here, if you go into website tools, this is where you can add custom CSS for your website to customize certain styles a little further than Squarespace allows. You can see they have a warning here. It can break your design, so you have to kind of know what you're doing with that. And it's totally not necessary to use custom CSS on your website. I have a whole video where I go into detail on how to use custom CSS in a Squarespace website. So make sure you check that out if you're so inclined. Okay, so that's the overall dashboard. Down here, it tells you that my trial is about to end. You'll get a 14-day free trial on any website that you create, but you can always extend the free trial if you want to continue working on it or playing with it. Once you're ready to actually publish the website and make it live, at that point you'll have to start paying. I'll show you a little trick on how you can extend the trial on your website quickly. So see how up here it gives you this silly little domain. After .com, after .squarespace.com, there should be a /config, and then remove pages and type in extend trial. And then if you hit enter, it's going to extend the trial for another 14 days, assuming that your trial is over. So this won't work until your free trial is up. So give it a shot if you want to keep extending your trial. But like I said, you won't be able to actually publish your site until you start paying for it. So this is just for you to continue working on it in the background before you make it live. It's also worth mentioning that this is version 7.1 of Squarespace, which uses Fluid Engine. Fluid Engine lets you drag and drop blocks around on your page and position them wherever you want. And it shows you like this grid, which is very different from the way Squarespace used to work. So if you're editing an older Squarespace website that's on version 7.0 or before that, then it will be using the classic editor. And this is what the classic editor looks like. It's a lot less flexible in where you can position elements on the page. So if you are on an older version of Squarespace, I would highly recommend you upgrade to version 7.1, and I'll add a link in the description below that walks you through how to do that. Otherwise, if you're not working on an older Squarespace website and you're starting with a new, fresh website, then you have nothing to worry about. You're going to be on 7.1 by default. To start editing our website, we'll need to press this edit button right here to go into edit mode. And now you can tell that we're in edit mode because it's taking up the full screen, and also you can see these blue highlights showing up around everything. Each page on a Squarespace website is broken up into sections. So you could see where the section is based on where these blue outlines are. So like this is a section, this is another section right here, this whole thing. And then within each section, you have blocks. So each of these is a block. If we deselect everything, just click outside of any of these blocks, then we'll see the add block button here. And we'll also see the section settings pop up here. So if I click on the add block button, you'll see all the different types of blocks that we could add to our section. So to adjust the height of the section, you can use this button right here, or you can manually adjust the height by clicking into this edit section button and then adjusting it right here. So also within this little pop-up are some other options. We have the duplicate button, which will allow you to duplicate this whole section. And then you can also move sections up or down on the page. So like if I press down, it just moved it down here and it bumped that other one up. So I'm going to now just bring it back up, and now it's back up here. And then you can also delete a section by pressing this button here. So if I press the edit section button up here, these are the settings we can use to customize this particular section. Like I showed you before, we have the row count. We can also adjust the gap in the grid. You see the grid back here? If I press this button, it'll get rid of the spacing in between the rows and the columns, like that, which kind of just presses all the blocks up against each other. And then you can also press the three dots right here to adjust the spacing even further between the rows and the columns. I typically just leave this as the default setting. Scrolling down, the section settings right here. So what fill screen does is it basically just adds padding to the top and bottom of your section, like between your grid and the edge of the section. You can change how much padding is there by going through these options, but I typically just like to turn fill screen off because then it just pushes the grid right up against the edge of the section. Now I can position things right up to the edge of the section if I wanted to, you know, and that gives me more control over the layout. And then I can just add padding myself if I want to by just moving things around. Let's go back to the edit section pop-up and we can see some of these other section settings. So we can toggle on divider and it will add a cool little divider shape, which we can customize here. I always turn off the stroke, and then you can go into the settings for the divider shape by pressing this button here. So these are all the options you have for the shape of the divider. You can change the height of the shape, you can flip it. There is no option to add a divider to the top of a section, only the bottom. So if you do want to add what looks like the top of a section divider, like this kind of looks like it's the top of this next section, right? Because it's like the same color, but actually it's the bottom of this section. And you can tell because the blue outline that's around here, it goes all the way down to here. And then if we go into the settings for the divider, that's where we can flip it. And now it looks like it's the bottom of the top section. See that? Some other options that we have in here, we can change the background. We have 3 different options here for adding a background. We can add an image, a video, or we can add an art background, which these are pretty cool. They're very unique, and there's so many different options here. If you go into, actually this button right here would shuffle the settings and just create like random settings for you. That's cool. But you can also play with the settings yourself if you press this button. Change the colors. This one also has fog. It also looks like it has some noise, which is probably under texture. So there are so many settings that you can play around with here, and the possibilities are really endless with what you can achieve with these art backgrounds. It's really cool. So if you want to instead just have a solid color background, we can change that color by going under colors, and we can choose a theme for the entire section. So Squarespace gives you all of these color themes to choose from, and then to access the color theme settings, we can press this pencil icon right here. You'll be able to see which color theme is assigned to each of the sections right here. So this top section has light 1, and then as I scroll down, this section right here is assigned the color theme bright 2. And then within this color theme menu, we can change the settings for that particular theme. The whole point of this is to keep your colors consistent throughout your website. I go a little more into detail on this in my previous video if you want to go and check that out. Notice when I have the site styles menu up, I can't edit the page. It's because we're not in edit mode with this site styles up. So I would have to exit out of site styles, and I can do that by just pressing this paintbrush icon to toggle off the site styles menu, and now we're back into edit mode. So see how when I'm dragging blocks around, the grid shows up, but then when I let go, it hides the grid. If you find it more helpful to keep the grid up while you're editing, you can toggle it on and off by just pressing the G key on your keyboard. Let me show you how to add a new section. As you would probably guess, you just press the add section button wherever you want that section to be, right? So if I want it to be in between these two sections, I would press this one. And then you get this add section pop-up, which shows you all these pre-made section templates that you can choose from. Or you can also choose to add a blank section here. Some of these sections are a little special, and you can see the ones that are special because they have a little eye info icon up in the top right corner. And when you hover over it, it shows you this box, which explains basically what I'm going to tell you right now, which is that these sections are for displaying a list of items or a collection of items. So you won't be able to actually move things around within this section like you would with other sections. Instead, you would change the content that goes into the items, and then it would use the same kind of design or layout for each of the items in the list. By the way, you don't need to just use this for people, obviously. You could use it for anything that you want to have a collection of items using the same design or layout for each of the different items in the list. There's a lot of possibilities for this type of layout. So see how I can't really move blocks around within this section like I could with this one. So to change the actual content of this, we would go up here into edit content. So we can choose to show the title, show the body, show a button, and then there's also options for the whole section, like to show a title for the section or a button down here. And then to edit the actual content itself, we would go into the content tab. And this is where we can change the order of elements. We can change the image, the text for each of the elements. We can add new elements. We can delete them. If we actually add a title for the section, this is also where we would change the title right here and change the alignment for the title. And then if I go to the design tab, this is how we change the actual layout itself. So we can choose between these different options. And then we have some additional settings down here to change the layout even further. So yeah, these collection sections are pretty useful if you have a list of information that you want to show using the same layout for each of the different items. So we also have this option to save a section. And let me show you how that would be useful. So see here I have this newsletter section. If I want to add this to multiple pages and I don't want to have to rebuild this every time, I can save this section. Now it's added here to our saved sections tab in the add a section pop-up. So when I'm on another page and I click the add section button, it's going to show up right here. And I can just choose it and it'll add it to the page, which is very cool. That's a new feature that they just added. So now that we've talked about section settings, let's go ahead and talk about block settings. To add a block, like I said, you just press this add block button. I'm not going to go over all of these blocks in this video, but I will go over the top 3 that you'll be using throughout your website, which are these ones: the text, the image, and the button blocks. After you add a block, with the blocks selected, you'll see this little menu pop up right here. So the options that you get in this pop-up will depend on what type of block it is, but all of them will have this little pencil icon, which will bring up a settings pop-up where you can customize the settings for that block. Let's talk about the specific settings for an image block. This is where we can replace the image here. We can change the focal point of the image, we can attach a link to the image and also add some alt text here. I can also drag this pop-up. So we have these different options for how the image is displayed. So fit is going to maintain the aspect ratio, the original aspect ratio of that image. Fill will fill the entire container. So you can change the shape and size of it. It will just scale and crop the image to fill that entire space. And then you can also choose shape, which lets you choose any of these shapes to put the image in. These are very cool. So I'm gonna just hit fill. Then we can also change the corner radius. With this icon selected, you can change all of the corners at once. If you click this one, it lets you adjust each of the corners individually. So I can like remove this one, and I can also move that right up to the edge like that. Let me go back to the image settings. Under design, if we go to image effect, there are some pretty cool image effects that you can add. Just move this to images. These are fun. So this is actually where the parallax effect is, which is when the image kind of moves when you scroll the page, and you can adjust the settings by pressing that button. So yeah, you can mess around with these settings. If you have lightbox toggled on, then that will let people click on the image and see a larger version of it. And then overlay puts this color on top of it that you can change here, and you can also change the blend mode of the color too. So I'm gonna turn that off. Yeah, so those are all the image settings. Let me also show you a cool new thing that we can do with images. So let me scroll down to this section. So let me select a block, and you see this pin icon right here. This is a new feature they just recently added. The way it works is if you have a section layout that has 2 columns basically of content, and one of the columns is a lot longer or has more content than the other, you can pin the one that has less content, and it'll stay on screen as you scroll the other side of the layout. So let me just show you, because it's probably easier if I show you what I mean. So with this image pinned to the top of the section here, I'm going to add more content to this other side of the screen. So I'm going to go and just grab some test text, and I'm just going to add some dummy text in here. And now this side of the layout is a lot longer than this side, right? So as I scroll, only the right side of the layout is going to scroll, and the image is going to stay pinned to the top. We can change the way it pins to the page by going into the pin settings. I think the best option probably is usually going to be the center aligned option. So that will pin the image to the center of the screen while the other side is scrolling. So let me just undo. It really only works when you have like a lot of content to scroll. So like if I have this pinned and see there's not really a lot of content here to scroll, it doesn't really work as well. So I'm just going to turn that off. Okay, so those are the image settings. I want to go over the text settings now. So if I select this text and then we go into edit, these are all the text options we get, the text formatting options. Most of them are pretty self-explanatory. So if I select the text, I can go ahead and change them like this. If you don't have it selected and nothing is happening when you click on these, you probably need to have it selected. Not all of them require the text to be selected, but some of them do. If we want to change the size of text, we can do that by selecting the text and then going into this toggle right here, and we can choose from all of these different styles. So we have 4 different heading styles, 3 different paragraph styles, and then a monospace, which I don't really use. It's kind of more for coding. We can't change the text size directly in this menu. Instead, we would just assign it one of these styles, and then you would actually go into Site Styles under Fonts to change the actual font style itself. So like for heading 1, this is heading 1. I'll go into Headings. These settings up here in the top half are general and they apply to all of the different headings. And then down here, these are the sizes that apply to each of the individual headings, 1, 2, 3, and 4. The reason they don't let you change individual font sizes is much like the color themes. It's intentional for maintaining consistency throughout your website. However, there is an option in the settings to scale the text to fit the size of the container. So you can stretch it and kind of change the size that way. But like I said, just try to be consistent with your font styles and only use that if it's necessary. So with the text block selected, here are some other options we have. We can add a background to a text block, or we can also change the vertical alignment of the text. So here it's aligned to the top. This is nice because you can also change the height of the block. So this just gives us more control over the positioning of our text. So if you want to add a new line in a text box, you can press enter, obviously, but this kind of adds this space between the previous paragraph and this paragraph. If you don't want that space, you can hold down the shift key and then press enter, and then it will just start a new line without making it a new paragraph and adding that space. So another thing you can do is position elements on top of each other, which is really cool. You can change the order of the elements by pressing these buttons right here. So this one will move it forward. But you see how the text is kind of blending in with the background a little bit. There's not really high contrast here, so it's hard to read. So this would be a perfect example for when you would want to use a background color. Now you can see the text a lot better. With the background color, you can change the color here, but for consistency, you can also change the color in the site styles. So this is light 1, right? This section has the light 1 theme. So I'll go to light 1 to change the settings. And then if I scroll down to text and then look for the background color, this background color right here will change the color of this block. So I'm going to change it to gray maybe. And then I can also change the text color. So this is a heading 1, right? The extra large heading. So you can change the color of the text that appears on top of a background. So I'm going to click on that, and then that's going to allow me to change the color of the actual text itself. I'm just going to click on the Site Styles button to toggle out of Site Styles. And then what you can also do is go into the Style background to change the settings of the background. So you can add a corner radius, you can add some more padding, adjust the padding like this. So another thing I wanted to mention, within a text block, you can have multiple text styles. So right now, this whole text is assigned to paragraph 2. However, I can press enter and then add some title text here and then select just that line, and now I can change it to one of the headings. So then what we can do is add a background to that, and it becomes like a little card. So I'm going to go back into Site Styles, change the color, and then I want to change the corner radius. So then you can have like a little card like that. So yeah, there's lots of things you can do with a background. Now let me go into the button settings. So with the buttons selected, I'm going to go into edit. This is where we would assign the text for this button. It goes here, and then we can assign a link to it. You can choose a page from your website, or you can just enter a URL. So a good rule of thumb is to have open link in new tab selected if you're linking to an external website, like some other website. If you're linking to some page within your website, then you can toggle that off. We can go into the design tab. So with a button, we have, similar to the images, the option to either select fit or fill. Fill is going to scale the button to fill up the whole container, the button container. With fit selected, no matter what the size of the container is, it's always going to maintain the spacing, the padding that we selected in the site styles. So if I go into site styles and then go into buttons, if I select secondary button, see this one looks like this one. So now I can adjust the horizontal spacing and the vertical spacing right here. if I go back to edit mode and select the design tab, and then we can also change the alignment of the button within the container if we have fit selected. So these are the 3 button styles that we have available to us: primary, secondary, and tertiary. So let me tell you how I use this. I reserve primary buttons for the most important calls to action that I want the visitor of the website to take. And I style it in such a way that it is like the most in your face button. It's going to be using the bright accent color, and it's going to be like a solid color like this. You never want to have more than one primary call to action, I think, on the screen at once, because I think it confuses the user as to like which action they need to take. I use the secondary button type for the less important actions, but still only use one of those in a section at a time. If you do need to have multiple links, that's totally fine, but I just don't think that they should be buttons like this. There's too many calls to action here. I think these primary buttons should be reserved for the most important action. When you want to use multiple links in one section, I would use the tertiary button in that case. This is a little less intrusive. It's a little less in your face. You can still tell that it's a button, a link, because it's a different color. It looks a little bit different from the other text. And then what I would usually do for tertiary buttons as well is, let me go to this website where I get symbols, cool symbols from. I would add a little arrow as well, usually. And then obviously it would be better if you can like change the text to be different so they're not all the same text. But this is just for demonstration purposes. This, I think, looks a lot better than having like 3 primary in-your-face buttons. It's less intrusive. If you want to see the hover style, when you like hover over a button, you can't do that in edit mode, unfortunately. But if I save and then exit out of edit mode, now we can hover over buttons and see the hover style. And there's not enough padding. See that there's not enough horizontal padding here. So I'm going to actually go into site styles and then go to buttons, and I'll go to tertiary button up here, and then I'm going to add some horizontal padding right here. See? Okay, so those are probably going to be the most used blocks within your website. Let me also touch on the header and the footer. Right now we're editing the whole page here, right? We're in edit mode. If we want to edit the header, we would hover over the header, and then we can click on the edit site header button. And now it's going to gray out the rest of the page, and we're just editing the header right now. So we can change the site title or logo here. I can add an image for the logo, or if you want, you can also just have the site title show. If we click outside of any of these blocks to get these 2 buttons, I'm going to click on add elements. These are all the extra elements that we can add to our header. So you see I have the button on. We can also add social links, and you can edit the social links by clicking here and clicking on the pencil icon. I'm going to check that off for now. And then you can also add a cart if you have e-commerce added to your website. If you go here, you can change the cart icon. And then there are some other options here, like you can add a login if you have memberships. The other button over here, edit design, this is how you change the layout of the header. So you have these different options to choose from. And you can change the spacing in between the links over there. There's some other options that you can change here for the header. You can add a border, you can add a drop shadow if you want. If you want, you can change the color. Adaptive will just take on whatever the color of this top section is. Or you can change it to be always the same color no matter what. If you want to go back and edit the page, you just click outside of the header. If we scroll down, let's edit the site footer. With the site footer, you have more flexibility than the site header in that it's basically just like all the other sections. You can move elements around, you can add whatever blocks you want to your footer. It's just another section, basically. So I'm gonna get rid of this for sure. You can also choose from pre-made footer layouts by just adding a section, and then these are all the footer section templates that they have available. So let me choose this one. And here, I'm gonna just get rid of this old one. If we had a logo image, we can delete this and add an image block and then add our logo. Here we can add links to all the different pages in our website. So that's pretty much it. Make sure when you're editing, you are constantly pressing the save button right here before you exit out of edit mode. While you're in the dashboard here, if you want to see a preview of what your website will look like, you can press this arrow right here. And this is where you can also kind of like hover over things and click on links and make sure that they work. And we can press this arrow icon to get out of there. Okay, so that's pretty much it. This video is kind of part of like a little web design video series that I'm doing, focusing on making websites in Squarespace. I think my next video is going to be more so general web design guidelines. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you subscribe if you're not already subscribed so you can get notified when that video comes out. In my last video, I talked about how to get started with a website in Squarespace, all the different template options you have available to you, and then I also went into detail on the site styles and how to change your fonts and all the colors and stuff. So if you haven't already, make sure you check that one out next, and I'll see you in the next video, okay? Bye!